time to dive into the For FF's Sake podcast. FF's Sake podcast. The place for your weekly dose of fantasy football advice, breakdown, and debate. Redraft, dynasty, sleepers, and buy or sell candidates. It all gets discussed right here. Now, let's go to your hosts, two guys that say the other is an idiot. Ian Steele and Evan Harris.
Welcome into For FF's Sake. This is episode 4. Evan Harris here, Ian Steele beside me, and we got a lot to cover in this 4th episode. We missed our upload time, so we're doing this after the Thursday night game. We actually started recording during halftime, so maybe we'll miss some really exciting stuff that'll win or hurt us in our leagues this weekend.
Well, I don't have too much as far as shares in the Jaguars and the Bengals, so hopefully although I have a couple shares in Chark, so we'll cover that in a minute, but that's pretty upsetting.
Speaking of upsetting, I know you have a few shares of, and our listeners as well, T. Higgins, a lot of guys, whether it's dynasty or redraft, he was highly thought of this year, and he's battling a few things. We'll talk about him as well. Speaking of that, let's jump right into the news. A lot happened this past week. You mentioned to me on a phone call, Ian, that last year, week 2, it seemed everybody just died on the field. Hopes and dreams of fantasy seasons died right there too. It felt like a lot of highly drafted guys got hurt. This week, it was brutal. There was some guys that didn't just go down. They went down early in games, or they went down, tried to come back, and they just never got the same trust. So last week, if you were at home and you're listening to this and you had worse injury luck than me in a league last week, I'm going to break down this for you. I want you to comment on the video or comment on the podcast. Go to our Twitter, For FF's Sake. I got to do better about shouting out the social medias, Ian. Let me know if you had worse luck than this. But last week, I started CMC, AJ Brown, and Juju Smith-Schuster in the same week. All 3 got hurt, and you're saying, okay, they got hurt, you lost the game. Yeah, I lost the game. But I only lost the game by it was less than 3 points, right?
But he lost James White. But anyways, that was a tough loss. I mean, I enjoyed watching it.
But we'll start with that CMC hamstring injury. We'll run through some of these. We want to touch on a few, but pretty big, significant injury. It's not something like last year that's going to keep him out half the season. Probably looking, they at one point, I've seen a report say week to week. I've seen another say it's probably 3 to 4. But the big news in all of this is Hubbard is an instant start in your lineup right now.
Yeah, and actually on the down low, maybe Tremble as well, because he's designated for a tight end, and he's not really a tight end. He's more of a H-back, fullback / he's a bruiser. So, I mean, if you're like, and that's a thin position. If you're struggling, and I'm in one league where I'm really light at tight end, I picked him up, and I'm going to probably throw him out there this week because there's a good shot he gets a goal line carry. And if I get 7 points from a tight end, I'm probably okay with that.
Trimble, 6'4", 250, big body, big frame, but very mobile. They liked when they got him in the draft. I found it interesting. They were talking on the broadcast last week during that game, how there was a lot of teams that reached out to the Panthers when they made that pick, 3rd round pick, 5th round pick, somewhere in that range. And we're like, we really like that guy. Trimble's got some wheels. So I could see that. Obviously the Panthers are a team that are not afraid to bring a different position aside from running back in the backfield. Curtis Samuel, 8 last year down the stretch, filling in for Mike Davis and Christian McCaffrey. I do think they're going to give Hubbard a big shot. Another name I think you should watch here is Royce Freeman. They gave Freeman a lot of carries last week. The only reason I say that is for a rookie, I think it is really easy to fall out of the good graces of your head coach. And if they don't trust Hubbard to have that block, to be blocking on 3rd down to protect the quarterback, if he has a fumble, don't be shocked to see Freeman come in and take a large portion of that role. Or, I mean, Freeman's also next man up, and we've seen in that Panthers offense, just get whoever's running the ball. Whoever's running the ball on that offense, you want them in your lineup. So if you have a deep league, if you're if you're a 14-team league, 16-team league, I would say go out and pick up Freeman. He's a good pickup. Obviously, don't hold a ton of value in Dynasty. A.J. Brown is week to week with a hamstring. He did not pull it. He did not tear it. It is a strain. Read a report from Jim Wyatt, Tennessee Titans, online. I used to work for the Tennessean. Really cool reporter to follow on Twitter. But Jim Wyatt on Twitter said that Brown on the long, deep shot early in the first quarter just felt some tightness, and they didn't want to chance it. So when they did the MRI, nothing's there. He's clean. They have some easy games coming up, and not that any game is particularly easy in the NFL, but they have the Jets. And then I forget who another
What's
pancake.
What's the Titans' record right now?
2-1.
Oh, they really okay.
Yeah, 2-1.
I don't know why. I thought they were one of those under the radar, like and whatever teams. But fair enough.
No, they lost so bad to Arizona in week 1. Everybody thinks. I still thought it. I was shocked when I looked at it. They came back against the Seahawks and then played.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you won in overtime. That's correct. Yeah.
Last week. Anyways, I'll talk on the Titans for an hour.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear that.
Let's not do that. But I do think that this is an injury where if they were in the meat of their schedule pushing for the playoffs late in the season, he probably plays next week. But I wouldn't be surprised for them to hold him out 2 more weeks to get him ready and fully go for Buffalo. Also, and they really like their wide receiver depth. A guy like Josh Reynolds, who fantasy players will know is healthy, who'll be back in this week. I forget the guy's name. Mojo is what he goes by. Marcus Johnson. He used to play for the Colts. Had a few good games for the Colts at fantasy relevancy. And then a guy like Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, which if you play in dynasty leagues, he's at the top of your trending charts right now. A young second-year guy, undrafted, caught a touchdown last week, was on the field for 80% of the snaps. I think led the team in targets with 5. As a Titans fan, I don't know that he is a long-term guy in dynasty. But if you're, again, in one of those deep leagues and you can pick him up on your flex, may not be a bad play because Julio and AJ are not going to play this week.
Yeah, and maybe not the week after, like you said. Julio's had hamstring injuries come kind of on and off the last 2 or 3 years. He hasn't missed a lot of games, but he's missed like a game here, a game there. He's been less than 100%, and you can see it. And so the Titans are obviously pushing for the playoffs. They're pushing for a postseason run, and they're going to need those guys down the stretch, like you said. So it's better when they can kill a game with their run game and they have some decent depth. Then why risk it? Why put them up for the season when right now we're seeing teams get decimated by injury, and it's going to be another war of attrition, I think. So I think definitely this week they're neither of them are going to play. And maybe the week after, but
so we got some guys on here as well. We got Antonio Gibson, did not practice. It was downgraded to did not practice with a shin injury. Man, he's just had so much little ticky-tacky injuries. Pushing into late last year, had the toe injury, had a foot injury, now the shin. If he was, a fifth-year guy in the league, I wouldn't be as concerned. But Ian, is it cause for concern that we're week 3 and he's not practicing on a Thursday?
Yeah, I mean, Thursday not practice is never good for a game day. Usually that there's very few players I think that tend to not practice and then still make the game. Like there's a very few, like Julio's one, Nyuk. DeAndre Hopkins is another.
And again, you're talking about veterans at that point. You're talking about guys that have been in the league for 6+
and
years.
They get their days off. They've earned that. So they get their days off. Younger guys, you don't want to see that DMP on Thursdays and especially Fridays. Fridays it's not happening.
One positive I will say is you look at who the head coach is, right? Ron Rivera, former player, and former players tend to rest their starters a little bit more than the average coach. Vrabel does it all the time. That's why on one instance, it wouldn't surprise me to see Julio and AJ out this week. On another, it wouldn't surprise me to see him starting.
Right.
Vrabel and former players like that tend to lean that way and rest guys.
Yeah. I think if he plays, I don't know what kind of capacity it'll be in. Which that is tough to roll out. When you have those question marks coming into the game, I'd rather they just declare him out earlier and just let it be from a fantasy perspective. But I get why they don't, because you don't want to clue in your opponent early what the game plan is. So I kind of get why they don't, but it sure is frustrating.
So if he doesn't play, let's get to the fantasy side of this for FF's sake, right? If he doesn't play, is it the McKissick show, or they have Patterson there now, who ran really well in the preseason, the young kid out of Buffalo, undrafted? Are you fully committing to McKissick, or what are you doing with
Patterson? I would probably say McKissick, just because they always say about rookies in pass pro and how they have a tough time like acclimatizing to that. And McKissick is the pass pro back there. So I'm not saying that the rookie doesn't get any snaps. He's going to have to take some, because, you can't run, unless you're Derrick Henry, you can't run or Najee Harris, you can't run every ball all game. But I think McKissick becomes the main back this week.
So Patterson has only played 7% of the offensive snaps, and that was in week 1. Has only played special teams week 2 and week 3. Had 2 carries for 9 yards in that first game, and has been registered to the bench since. Yeah,
I wouldn't guess that he would, if Gibson misses, I would say 20-25% of snaps he might play. I just think they'll start throwing the ball a lot more.
So does McKissick become an RB2 or strictly a flex in that scenario?
Who are they playing?
Atlanta.
I think RB2 is a stretch, but I mean that's too. Washington's defense.
If it's PPR, awful. He's got RB2 upside.
Yeah, upside. Oh, upside. Yeah, I wouldn't call him a lock though, but upside for sure. So that's going to be that could be a good game for fantasy perspective. Two pretty bad defenses so far this season.
So we got Tony Pollard. How loud did any Zeke fans or Zeke owners shout and cheer when they saw that Tony Pollard, which this one's a little bit of a mystery, did not participate on Thursday?
There's no designation as to what the reason was. There's no hip or shin or back or hamstring or anything. I think he probably plays. So I'm not really worried about this one as much. But if he does play, they may use him less than they have done, because similarly to the Titans, they're obviously playing pretty solid so far. They're looking for the playoffs, and Pollard's become a pretty important part of that offense, 1A, 1B kind of thing. So, and we know that Zeke can carry the load. So for a week, why not just give Zeke 70% of the carries and give Pollard a little bit less, and just let him sort of rest up but still play kind of thing.
Pollard, I hope it's nothing serious. And a lot of these, when they don't have any designation beside them, tend to lean towards the something personal. So maybe it's something along those lines. Don't know yet. But man, he's so explosive. He's playing really well this year. Lamar Jackson. The only thing I want to note on this is probably not smart to do flips into the end zone. Probably not a good idea as an NFL quarterback. Just a thought. May have no relation. But
yeah, no, for sure. It looked pretty good on when you paused it though. Yeah, he has a really nice canvas above his bed now, I'm sure.
So Juju rib injury, and man, so you had Deontay Johnson out. Deontay's practicing this week. Juju now rib injury. He's listed more as questionable for the game. A lot of beat up in that offense. How in the world Najee Harris isn't beat up is besides me. He gets hit behind the line of scrimmage on 70% of his touches, which is absurd for the production he's had. But that offense right now, I saw a tweet. I know this is kind of veering off the path a little bit, but I saw a tweet today. And it said, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, trade for Jared Goff. Like how out of the question though is that?
Goff's playing pretty solid, and I thought he got a bad rap in LA. Personally, I don't think he's a bad quarterback. That's just a really tough offense to run, and you set those expectations. Was it his second year? He took them to the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
There's a high expectation there going on, and that's hard to sustain. So I felt like he had a bad situation, really. But he's a good player. He looks pretty good in Detroit, and
I feel like I feel like he plays a lot more like a Matt Ryan, and they wanted a Brett Favre. They wanted a guy that could, hey, if we scheme a guy up 70 yards down the field open, we want you to hit that pass. And that's what Stafford's doing.
Yeah,
So,
no, for sure. Stafford's better. Don't get me wrong. He's much better. But Goff had such a bad rap because there was so much talent around there, and he was probably the weak link, but that doesn't mean he's a bad player.
Robert Woods misses him.
Yeah, yeah. So do I. I miss him a little bit too because of Robert Woods.
Zoom through a few of these real quick, and then we'll come back and touch on a few. Daryl Henderson ribs. Okay, if you went into this season drafting Daryl Henderson and thought he was not going to get hurt, shame on you. Okay, shame on you. KJ Hamler, ACL RIP, done for the season. Tim Patrick becomes a very interesting start in your flex. I've seen a lot of people really high on him in redraft. I think if you're in win.
Sorry. No, Noah Fant's this is probably your last chance to buy low on Noah Fant as well, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Tim Patrick becomes a very interesting buy as well for if you are in win now mode in Dynasty. I think that we mentioned before, Judy's probably 3 or 4 weeks for coming back at this point, but the way Judy plays, I think it's going to take him a little bit of time. We both mentioned that. Yep. Elijah Moore concussion, man, what could have been early on his season. I think at this point, Elijah Moore might be a cut candidate in redraft. In Dynasty, he is a buy. Sit him on your bench. That Jets offense just cannot get off and going. I love the talent. Hate the situation right now. Yeah. DJ Chark happened tonight. Fractured ankle. He's done for the season. T. Higgins, boy, it is definitely taking advantage of that right now.
Yeah. Now it's short-lived. It's short-lived.
I shouted through all those because I wanted to give time for you to mourn. I'm just going to take off my hat for a moment.
Yeah.
Ian, tell us about your guy.
Yeah, I mean, James White. He's a hometown hero. Beautiful person. Tough week. That was a good spot for him as well. I thought he was going to have a good game. And he got his carry and pop goes the hip. I guess he's older than I thought, It's a tough one. That could be a career. It could be a career. That's not something that you come back lightly on, and he's a shifty player, and that might impact him. So that could be him done, which is a shame because he's been the quintessential flex play, like for about even without Brady, even the first two weeks of the season, he was absolutely Mr. Flex. Like he was perfect in that role. 7-8 catches a game, 60 yards in the air. And then he would get a touchdown here and there. He was just a man you could roll out, guaranteed double-digit points, and you never even had to worry about it. So it's a shame. I don't think there's been a player in the last 6 or 7 years with a higher floor than he had for where you draft him. Like you never drafted him high. So
you weren't drafting him necessarily for upside. You were drafting him for what you felt like he could contribute week in and week out. I'm really glad that we're recording this on a Thursday, so we didn't have to have you crying on the show today. I know it's giving you some time to regroup.
Yeah,
I'm glad for that.
I'm still representing. We'll represent until the day he retires.
Biggest James White fan that also will sell the player as quick as he possibly can in any league that we're in every year, it seems like. But
the thing is, I'm the only one that knows the value, and then until 3, then people are like, dang, he's actually pretty good. I could use him. And I'm like, you can.
Yeah, you can.
Can I get your 4th round wide receiver? Thank you.
It's worked for you a few times. My background's falling down. What is going on? So here's the question with the James
franchise crumbling.
Bruh. Here's the question with the James White situation. Everybody and their brother is scrambling. Who's going to be the next James White? Because nobody wanted to trade for him because everybody picked him up in their 15th round. But everybody now wants that guy. And I mean, I'm guilty of it. I have picked up J.J. Taylor this week. I've picked up another guy I'll talk about a little bit more in a moment who I think may fill that role. Ramondre Stevenson's not going to get some more carry. Brandon Bolden is back in our lives. Thanks a lot. And then, of course, Damon Harris has the role right now, the starting role. But I think the answer may be nobody. Ian, what's your thoughts on that? That's your team.
Yeah, I mean, James White's such a unique player. He really is, and I don't undervalue him when I compare him to Kamara in the way that he plays. There really isn't anybody close. Kamara, and McCaffrey. They over the last 5 years, I think, are the top three in targets.
Eckler.
Maybe Eckler, yeah, maybe Eckler as well. But you're talking about a very small, and you're drafting Kamara 101, CMAC 101, Kamara probably in the top three, and then Eckler in the first round, and then James White's 10th round, 11th round, 12th round, whatever. So the value you get is unique, and it's because of his skill set. I don't know that we have a guy that can really replicate what he could do on the field. I think the nearest one that we have is probably JJ Taylor. I didn't see enough from Stevenson in the preseason to suggest he's a good enough receiving back to replace that. JJ Taylor looks a little bit better. He's a bigger bodied player. He's kind of more of a sort of a hybrid between Damon Harris and James White. So he might, and he's really shifty, which is nice. So I would say he's probably the closest we have on the roster to James White.
So I got two names for you. One's a buy low right now, and one's a waiver wire pickup. If you're in some deeper leagues, the first obviously is Jonnu Smith. He's played some H-back before. They've already lined him up in the backfield a few times this season. Obviously, he's not James White in the terms of type of player, but I could see them on third down, setting him in the backfield, drop off type situation with Hunter Henry also on the field. That wouldn't shock me. You're very multiple with that. You could bring somebody else in the backfield, hand it off, have two tight ends blocking. So there's a lot of schematic things with that I could see the Patriots doing, and they have done in the past, right?
Yeah.
The next guy is a guy I picked up in a league, not expecting a ton of right now, but I found it interesting. I went back and watched the highlights of that game. I wanted to kind of see. I like going back and watching highlights. NFL does a good job of like 15-minute highlights where you see a lot of the plays. And I was surprised to see Kendrick Bourne on two of, it was his breakout game for the year, but two of his catches came from out of the backfield. And I've said from the start, James White is a glorified receiver playing running back. And that's not an insult.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Bourne, it wouldn't completely shock me, as he's been a shifty guy. He's been a multiple guy, to see him. Mixon just scored a touchdown. Sorry. Stop me for a minute. But have him in a league. Would not shock me to see Bourne take over that role. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean,
a little bit of a bold take. I get it.
Yeah, it is, but it's not that bold. I think I have a bolder take, but
okay.
The way that Daniels and Belichick run their offense, it is so flexible, so fluid, and that's why they've been so successful for a long period of time, because from a defensive standpoint, you don't know who's doing what their scheme is, anything. Because like you said, we'll line up tight ends in the backfield. We'll line up running backs out wide. And you're just like, I don't understand. What kind of formation is this? So I wouldn't be surprised if we did something along those lines, but I also wouldn't be surprised if we traded for Rex Burkhead back. He's a guy who knows the offense. He's a very, very good receiving back. Houston have a deluge of running backs that they can't use. So I wouldn't be surprised, especially with we obviously just got a couple draft picks when we traded away. Who did we trade away? Somebody garbage.
But anyway, the Texans are always in the moving business right now.
Right.
So, I'll tell you what, if David Johnson got traded there, who they've obviously tried to move as well, that would be very interesting.
I think he'd be a more expensive piece to move for, and he doesn't know the offense. Rex Burkhead knows the offense already, so he would be an easy plug and play, and then he would immediately have value again. Because look at last season. He was the only reason James White probably wasn't an RB2, because he had 4 or 5 games where he exploded, and James White didn't really do much. So, and that was with Cam. So, and
here's the thing: we just wasted 15 minutes probably talking about this, and Belichick's just going to do some Belichick thing and go pick up a practice squad guy off the Bills or the Dolphins. That's the most likely thing if we look at the past experiences. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Run through our report card so we can jump into a new segment here. Just run it down for us, Ian.
Yeah. So it was a short one this week. Obviously, we only had our favorite plays for the week. So we both hit 2 and 1. So we had a couple good takes, and a bad take. Evan hit on the Saquon Barkley take. That was nice to see. I think we've all been waiting for him to come back, and he looked like Saquon. And then Evan's worst take was AJ Brown, but I kind of gave him an asterisk there. Obviously, AJ Brown got hurt early, and you can't really account for that. So, and then I went 2-1 as well. My best take, Austin Eckler, looks electric. He looks back to his best, and in that offense is just firing. My worst take, another sad moment for me, along with James White, Robert Woods. Bring back Jared Goff. Please.
Is it still buy low season on Robert Woods? Are you still buying Robert Woods?
Am I still buying Robert Woods? If I've already bought him, I'm holding him. If I have Cooper Kupp, I'm selling him for everything. I don't know if I'd go buy Robert Woods yet, but I'm afraid they're going to scheme Kupp out of the game at some point. Defenses they just are. So Robert Woods is going to have good games. It's just going to be when. And that's going to be tough. I'll probably need to see at least one good game, and then I might be back on the buy. But if I have him, I'm not selling him for cheap. So
the thing about Robert Woods is because he's had such a slow start, if you could buy him cheap right now in any format, if you can buy him cheap, then the first game where they build it around him, like they just gave Deshaun Jackson a game, the first game where he has a touchdown and 100 yards, you are back at that price where you can sell him at his value was before the season. It takes one game because everybody's like, oh, there it is. And we expect it the rest of the season.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I like buying and flipping. All right. So here's a new segment for you guys. Cash dump stash. We're not stealing this off anything, so don't think that. Cash dump stash. Who's a guy you want to cash in on? You want to go buy right now? Who's a guy that you want to dump? You want to trade off, get rid of your roster? And who's a guy you're holding, stashing on your roster? I stashed Laviska Shenault, and I'm pretty happy about that right now with the Chark injury. So felt pretty good about holding on to him in the redraft. I tried like heck to trade for him this week, and out of brutal luck, it would have been a good trade, but
yeah,
it is what it is. All right, so here we go. Here's our first three. What we're going to do, Ian, 3 names of guys that are similar value right now, whether it be dynasty or redraft. 3 guys that coming into the season, they had very, very similar value. And where are we at on them now? Because although they had similar value at one point, very different now. The first 3 names for you. And these are going to be fun because these are guys that a lot of people are going, what do I do with this guy? I looked up 2 of these names on Twitter earlier today, and people were going, what do I do? What do I do? And the first one's Allen Robinson. Do I hold? Do I sell? Allen Robinson's been a number 1 receiver 2 years in a row, quarterback proof because he's had terrible quarterbacks. And now Saquon Barkley and AJ Brown, all 3 of these guys, very interesting. AJ Brown not living up to the hype right now, battled injuries. Julio's taking targets. Saquon Barkley is finally looking like Saquon Barkley, but he's about to face a murderer's row of defenses. He just got the Falcons last week. And then Allen Robinson, who I'm flabbergasted on him. So Ian, start us off. Who are you going to buy right now?
If I'm going to I'd probably buy AJ Brown because like you said earlier, I think it's just a precautionary couple weeks. They're going to ease him back, and that's still a very good offense, and he's still a very good player. So I'm probably buying AJ Brown. I'm probably stashing Saquon Barkley, and I'm probably dumping Allen Robinson.
You're going to sell him even at his current value?
I'm not even at this point. I mean, might even just put him on waivers.
Ooh. All right.
No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, he's probably a sell. But again, I still think he has the name value, and people are waiting for him to pop, and you can probably still get decent value for him. So
I'll take a small different approach, argue for FF's sake. I'm definitely going to buy AJ Brown. I did that in the league this week. I think very big there that he could have a strong into his season. The Titans are one of those teams they always pick up down the stretch, or at least for the last couple of years under Vrabel, right? I am selling Saquon Barkley, and I don't mean sell because I think he's terrible. I'm saying sell because you always want to sell at top value. And I think right now, all those people that wanted to believe in Barkley are on the train. And if you go look at his defenses, Ian, can you pull that up real quick? Pull
For
up
Barkley?
Yeah, pull up Barkley, and I'll keep talking about him for just a minute. So Barkley just played at the Atlanta Falcons, who are in Struggleville. Arthur Smith is driving the struggle bus, and it's not brown like his daddy's FedEx trucks, okay? I mean, that offense is struggling. That defense is struggling. Barkley was able to take advantage of that. He had a good game. He had some good averages. First time he got a lot of run, but he's still limited in practice. They're still holding him back in practice. And that team, the Giants, you don't know what you're going to get it week in and week out. I think if you can get top value for Barkley, you go get it. If you can get another RB1, go get it. And I think you can right now. What's his next few defenses?
So he plays New Orleans week 4, Dallas week 5, the Rams week 6, and then Carolina week 7. So it's not the easiest run of games.
If I'm holding him, you can't buy him right now. He had a good game. You can't go buy him. If I'm going to hold him, I need to see something. I guess here's my thing. If he comes out next weekend or this Sunday, if he comes out this Sunday and lays up a dud against a pretty good defense in New Orleans, where is his value at then?
Yeah, it's a tough one for sure. I would say I don't expect that to happen just because of the injuries that they suffered last week at receiver position. I think he'll get kind of like Najee did last week when Steelers lost a bunch of their guys. He'll get a ton of targets and he'll maintain his value a little bit that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be a tough run, but after that run, after the bye, assuming he stays healthy, of course, which is obviously a big question for everybody apparently right now. He has a nice run for the playoffs: Philly, Miami, the Chargers, Dallas again, and then Philly again. So those are what you want to see, as far as fantasy managers. So, but can you ride him to that point and still be playoff contention? That's a tough question.
I think he's a guy you can trade for around mid-season in 2 or 3 more weeks if he's still healthy. If he's done anything relevant or struggled through these struggle games, I think he's a guy you can trade for later. Allen Robinson, I'm going to use the same approach I just said about Robert Woods. It takes one game for everybody to be like, oh, there's Allen Robinson. Right. He comes out this week, has a touchdown, 60 yards, puts up a 15, 16-point game. You're going to get a lot more value out of him than you can right now. I've been trying to move him in a dynasty league, and I just stopped because I didn't feel like I was getting anything close to what his value will be after one average week. So next 3, Chris Carson, Miles Sanders, and Mike Evans. I think one of these is pretty easy. Cash, dump, stash. Who's a guy you want to go buy? Who's a guy you want to sell? And who is a guy you're holding? I want to start off with this one. A guy that I am selling, and I never like to sell at low value, is Miles Sanders. That offense, you have a running quarterback who is running RPOs, but forgetting the run or the option part. Let me put it that way. He's just not handing it off to his running backs. He's keeping it or he's throwing it. And you have a Gainwell who's very talented and eating up snaps as well. They want to get the rookie Smith involved. I just think Miles Sanders, although very talented, is becoming a forgotten piece in this offense. So
yeah,
I think he's
for sure. I agree. And by the name, it's not even a sell. It is a dump. Like, just get him off your roster. He's nothing but a headache. For me, anyways.
Sanders is a guy right now that I would like to use in a trade format that I like to do a lot, especially in redraft, is where if you can take Sanders and you're going to move him in a trade for a lesser running back. What I mean by lesser running back, a guy that was probably drafted a little bit later who has less name value, but it's probably putting up similar numbers right now, like an Edmonds or a Gaskin. I don't want to do that trade straight up. So what I want to do is I want to get a little better at receiver. So take one of your mid-tier receivers, try to get a slightly better receiver. That guy's going to think, well, I'm getting a better running back. He's going to pull off the deal. That's a trade format I really like in that scenario. Try to use the name value of Sanders.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
Now you're going to go pull off one of those. You're welcome, Ian. I'm here to help you.
Oh yeah, because I have a problem with trading.
Who's your buy between Carson and Evans? Both of them are kind of hard to buy right now, though.
Yeah, I think so. I guess the buy is Carson. So for me, if I'd have read into this one, Sanders I'm just dumping, Evans I'm selling, and Carson I'm keeping. Yeah. So, because like Evans, I think you get pretty good value right now. But Antonio Brown's back this week. We're going to see the same kind of thing. Like we're going to see a revenge game for AB. We're going to see a revenge game for Gronk. So I don't know if Evans, and then obviously Godwin is a solid piece. I don't know if Evans gets too much of a look in this week. So I think this is the best opportunity to sell him because he's had 2 good games in a row. So
I think I would be holding Carson as my stash. I think I would be buying Evans only for the simple fact of you have a lot of he had the good game right with 2 touchdowns last week, but you have a lot of managers right now that are hearing all the talk of this. They're not going to support everybody. It's not going to work all season long, yada, yada, yada. So I think he's a guy that if you have a manager that's thinking about that, capitalize on it now. The next 3 here, we've already talked about A.J. Brown. How in the world did our editing team, quality team, let this pass through here? A.J. Brown, Nick Chubb, and Jonathan Taylor. Let's see. Obviously, I am holding Nick Chubb. Stash. Jonathan Taylor, I am selling. I'm dumping Jonathan Taylor. I'm selling at name value if I can get it. And A.J. Brown, I am buying. Any difference there?
Yeah, I would actually use Nick Chubb's down game last week to go and try and buy him if I could. I think I'm probably stashing Jonathan Taylor just because running back is such a thin position, and I'm going to try and sell on the name value of AJ Brown in that particular scenario.
Okay.
Yeah, and just kind of like you said, maybe get a 2-for-1 like a Deebo Samuel and another solid running back, maybe who has been pretty good, who's like a underutilized name, maybe
Javonte
even a Chris
Williams
or Javonte Williams would be a good one potentially. Like so, you get like another piece if you're looking for depth, which is going to be a scenario a lot of people are in already because of injury. So I think that would be an okay trade. But yeah, Nick Chubb is somebody I would try and get right now because last week, obviously, it was the Hunt show, and that might put some managers in a little bit of a concerned position because the week before, he really didn't do much.
Don't be that manager.
His last
be
PD.
That manager. Unless you're in our league and you're going to sell him to me. I'm cool with that.
Not to Evan. Always to me.
Who has – oh, never mind. I know who has next. Anyways, all right. So Elijah Moore, Damian Harris, and Robert Woods. Man, this one's a tough one. I am Damian Harris, Elijah Moore, and Robert Woods. All right, I am going to buy Robert Woods. I am stashing Nick Chubb, and I am dumping Elijah Moore.
You mean Damian Harris? Because Nick Chubb wasn't an option in that one.
Oh, Damian Harris, yeah.
Okay.
He's going to have a Nick Chubb like week. Bold take.
There you go. Hey, I'd like to see it. That would be nice. Yeah, I agree with the same, and especially in redraft, I don't think Elijah Moore is going to have any value. That team just looks terrible. They just look like the Jets. Like I said to you week 1, the Jets are going to be the Jets until they're not, and they are the Jets. So yeah, I would agree with that. I'd go and try and buy Robert Woods low, or you can definitely buy Robert Woods low right now. It's probably the lowest his value will ever be. I don't think I've seen him have 3 bad games in a row in his career, or at least definitely not since he's been in LA. So, and then Damon Harris is still a value just because he's really the only piece in that running back group now, which is ironic because for the last 4 years, there's been 4 pieces and you never know which one to play. Now there's only 1 piece and you're not confident to play him. It's interesting.
One thing I'll say about Robert Woods real quick, I do not think he is a buy in Dynasty. He has an out in his contract next week. next year. He has an out in his contract next year. I think they really like Van Jefferson. I think they like Tutu Atwell. I think they hold Cup. So I would not be shocked to see him be a cap casualty in the offseason next year.
Yeah.
So that's just a thought there. All right, last three here: Marquis Brown, Chase Edmonds, and Brian Edwards. I might shock you a little bit with this one, okay? Marquis Brown, Chase Edmonds, Brian Edwards. I am stashing Edmonds, holding Edmonds for now, because again, running back is a scarce position. I don't think you can sell him very high, and I don't think you can buy him cheap, or cheap enough to feel safe about it. Let me put it that way, especially if Ian's got him. I am selling Marquis Brown. I don't think that he can keep pace with where he's at. I think they want to get Mark Andrews more involved, especially if Lamar's a little banged up, and I think Bateman is going to take snaps. Bateman, Miles Boykin, both coming back from injury. They've both been out of the offense, both had really good off seasons. I'm selling Marquis Brown while I can, selling him high. If you're in Dynasty, I understand why you'd want to hold him, but again, I want to sell at top value. Brian Edwards is my buy, and here's why. I'm buying Brian Edwards if I can buy him cheap in a deep league redraft, or if I can buy him in Dynasty. Brian Edwards is 2 called touchdowns back from being our wide receiver 2 right now. And I understand ifs, buts, candies, nuts. I got all that. But he's 2. Now, you could also on the backside of that say, well, if it went for overtime games, where would he be? I
He'd be a wide receiver 9.
I got it. But again, a guy that he's just missed the end zone twice because of things that weren't really in his control. I guess getting tackled at the half-inch line maybe in his control. Had a holding call by a rookie that should not have. It was a terrible call.
Yeah, it cost me a wink. Thanks for that, rookie.
So again, I really think that he is a buy right now in dynasty formats. I know we're kind of jumping around a little bit. I think he's a guy they really like long term. And he's just super talented, man. Super Talented. So there's my list on those 3.
Yeah, and I would actually agree with you on all 3 on that one. I think Brian Edwards has looked good. Chase Edmonds has looked solid. He might actually be the reincarnation of James White, RIP, because they play a very similar game. They are more of a receiving back. They can carry the ball, but that's not their bread and butter or their cup of tea or their meat and potatoes, whatever you want to call it. They're very good out of the backfield, and they're shifty in space, and then they can make guys miss. So he might be that next Mr. Flex. So
if you own Kyler Murray or Chase Edmonds in any format on a weekly basis, how much do you hate James Conner? Just sniping touchdowns left and right.
Well, it's only really been it was only really week 3. Did he? I think he scored 1 in week 1, didn't he? And then nothing in week 2. And then,
but it's those touchdowns that typically that's going to go to Murray or the quarterback. I mean, the quarterback or the running back, because Murray runs.
Yeah, but line. James Conner is James Conner. He'll be out by week 6. So don't worry about it.
I don't know. I mean, he's not playing a ton of snaps. He was.
Yeah, but he doesn't need it. He could play 3 snaps and he'll bang his shoulder or something. The guy's made of glass. So
it's been a fun show. Let's hit our favorite plays for week 4 and a flex streamer for you guys. Ian.
Yeah. You mentioned, we talked about him. We already talked about him. I wanted to say JT here because I'm really hoping that Frank Reich remembers that JT is really good at football, and he was the main reason they won games at the end of last season. And they're 0-3, so do give it to your best player. But anyways,
they
I'm
need
not going to say
Carson Wentz
JT.
to stop audibling. Out of runs.
I'm going to say Nick Chubb. Prime position for a bounce back. Great matchup against Minnesota, whose rush defense is terrible. That's going to be a fun game as well.
My favorite play running back is David Montgomery. I think after last week, no matter who starts at quarterback, they know they need to run the ball. They need to slow the game down. I think they're going to give Montgomery a ton of touches.
Can we agree that Matt Nagy and Frank Reich need to take up netball or women's basketball coaching or something else because they suck as NFL coaches.
Yes,
it's really
agreed.
Super frustrating.
Agreed.
All right, good. We can agree on that for fantasy football's sake. Good.
All right, give me your favorite play at wide receiver.
This one I was high on him anyways, and then Tyler Lockett was downgraded to did not participate today in practice. So DK Metcalf could have one of his monster games this week, I think, against a pretty they're playing the 49ers and their defense, at least in the secondary, is not what it once was. So I think he could have a monster game.
He looks to have fixed his drop problems from last year a little bit. So I think that's a good one. Favorite play at wide receiver for me is going to be Scary Terry McLaurin. He gets to play Atlanta, say less. He's getting the volume. He's getting the targets. Curtis Samuel, I do not believe will be off IR again another week. So Scary Terry's a lock. One of my favorite plays at wide receiver. He's only projected 14.47. And if he gets
that surprises me. Yeah, it surprised me because he only needs really a score and he's over that projection. So
I'll let you go flex last because you got an interesting guy there. I'm going to go for mine. Jacoby Meyer is one of my favorite flex plays this week. Projected at 11.7. I think he's probably a lock for that. Pulled up an interesting stat in one of our leagues earlier today that he is the only receiver, I think, in NFL history with 104 career catches, and not a single touchdown. 104 career catches. It might be more than that. I think the next closest one they had listed was like 52 catches. Like,
wow.
50, so he's like double that mark.
Yeah, and he's had some pretty good fantasy weeks in his career without a touchdown. So
I'm not saying he's definitely going to score this week, but I'm going to say that Tampa defense, if there is a weakness, it's the secondary. And even if Richard Sherman plays, which is unlikely, he's not going to be lining up against Jacoby Myers. So Myers could have a really big week, especially with James White out.
Yeah, no, I don't hate that take. So my flex play, as like you said, is a little interesting because he was a guy highly touted coming in, but he's a guy that found his way to waiver wires a lot, and it's Brandon Nyuk. After 2 barren weeks to start, he had a pretty nice week 3, and I think he's out of the doghouse, so to speak, and that offense is really ticking, and it's really going through Garoppolo and the passing attack. Debo obviously being the number 1 target. Last week, Ayuk was number 2, and I think Kittle was number 3, and that was only really late in the game. He got a lot of his catches. So Ayuk looked like Ayuk, and I think he's projected 11.9 points, and I think he could beat that again. It's that, and again they play Seattle, and their secondary is iffy. So that could be a good game too. Seattle, San Francisco.
Hot take for you. If you have Kittle right now, this is your week to go trade him for Hawkinson. Hawkinson had a down week. Kittle's name.
He was outperformed by Darren Fells, for God's sake.
You go trade Kittle this week for Hawkinson in any format. Go trade that. I think that's a good trade. I think Hawkinson outperforms him the rest of the season.
Yeah, I like Hawkinson.
All right, matchup madness. Best NFL matchups to target for week 4. These are matchups that if you have a player in one of these, hey, throw them out there because it's probably going to be high scoring and a lot of fun. Ian, I'll let you go first because I think you picked one that have good offenses, but also good defenses. So interesting matchup. Let me hear it.
Yeah, and I think this is the 3rd week in a row I'm going for the Chargers matchup, and they're playing the Raiders, and they do both have decent defenses on paper, but they've both been in some pretty good games shootout wise. I think the offenses have outperformed. Raiders have been at overtime twice. Chargers obviously just upset the Chiefs. A lot of good pieces on both sides, offensive wise. The biggest question mark is obviously the Raiders running back group. Is Peyton Barber going to repeat? Is Josh Jacobs going to play? But other than that, I would roll them out there. Ruggs, Waller, Carr, Herbert, Eckler, and then the 2 receivers. Obviously, Allen and Williams, you're going to play. So it should be another good matchup.
Is this the week a Bryan Edwards touchdown counts? That's the question. All right, my matchup madness, and I just kind of used this knock on you, and then I thought, well, I guess I'm in the same boat. I picked 2 pretty high-scoring offenses with 2 pretty good defenses, Arizona and the Los Angeles Rams. This one could be a shootout. Kyler Murray and the boys probably got chewed out after a pretty dominant win just because of how weird that game was against the Jags last week. And now they get to go up against the Rams, who have a fierce man in the middle of that defense in Aaron Donald. But I think when you have a mobile quarterback that kind of not necessarily eliminates him from a game, but definitely helps you in that regard, sure. They have a pretty good offensive line as well. Arizona does. So that one could be a really fun one. Rondale Moore, a lot of people started him last week. I
was going to say, hot take, he bounces back this week with a big performance.
AJ Green playing pretty solid. You got Kirk on that offense. You have Hopkins. That offense is getting a little muddy. I mean, you have a lot of guys that could go off in any minute. There's so much there. It's just an interesting thought. And then you have the Los Angeles Ram. It's wear a cup because you're about to get kicked in it. Cooper Kupp is just lighting it up this year. I hope he continues it because it's been a lot of fun, and love to see a guy who's battled injuries come back and playing so well. So that's going to do it for this episode of For FF's Sake. Hope you've enjoyed. Follow us on all social media platforms, forffsake.com. If you want to know how to improve your lineup or have a question about a trade, message us Instagram, Twitter. I answered some of those today on our Twitter account. We also post some pretty funny stuff that apparently don't get us new followers. So there's that. We had a tweet go over like 150 likes, 30 something retweets. All you laughed at my labor, and I got one follow out of it, Ian. One guy, and he's going to unfollow next week probably.
Yeah, well, especially if you get bad advice for his fantasy team.
That's it. So make sure you follow us there. You can find this podcast obviously on YouTube for FF's Sake. If you're searching on your favorite podcast platform, search WCDT Radio. Ian, last thoughts.
Bring it on. Can't be as bad as last week. Let's go. Week 4, fresh slate.
We'll see you week 5. Have a good one.
Thank you for listening. Follow For FF's Sake on all social media platforms and search for us wherever you get your podcasts.